One of the greatest cities in Old Faerun looms on the horizon, but so does our hero's biggest challenges yet. Not only will she have to face ancient infernal threats, but also the petty evils of small tyrants, base bloodthirsty ballless cultists, and even someone who could have been a hero to her people.
I am Viconia de Veer.
All she has to help her along the way is her trusty shadow blade, her quick wits and convincing demeanor, and the combined magical muster of a small wizarding school. Will it be enough as she nears her most grand climax yet? Well, we got one way to find out. On to the video. Arya Elamunzi finds herself a day's travel away from Baldur's Gate at last, and as she stands here, she can't help but realize this last leg of her journey will undoubtedly be the climax that her whole life has been edging towards. And as our hero is laying in bed musing on these thoughts, suddenly our dream visitor starts ruining our peaceful trance, screaming for help as a gang of Githyanki come bursting out of a portal to the prism. We of course use a Misty Step to ignore them and run to the portal, because even when we're not half asleep, fighting Gith is a walking nightmare. Unfortunately, the nightmare does not end as we arrive in the astral prism, and the barrier protecting our dream visitor is punched to smithereens. Arya is not quite pleased. After doing our usual daily buffs, we jump into the nearest fight where a couple of Gith are just finishing off friendly intellect devourers of all things. Hopefully they don't hold a grudge for what we did last act. Our actual opponents here die super quickly on our very first turn, so we're not really worried for now. But things get a little bit more complicated as we arrive at the main fight, where our wicked smart wizard immediately puts 2 and 2 together and realizes our protective dream visitor is actually an illithid, and worse yet, they suck at fighting. Because we need them so we don't turn into a malevolent murderous mind flayer, we join the fight on their side. Thanks to our precasted haste and a hill giant strength elixir, after taking a chunky opportunity attack, we're able to zip right over to the Zephyr Gish, who's priority 1 since they can hold person, immediately tossing them into the void to float forevermore. Then we heal up with a potion and use a roaring thunder arrow to attempt to get another one to no avail. The remaining not so tactical Gith decide to prioritize the brain cats for some reason and still fail to eliminate them before the Emperor, that's our dream visitor, gets a stun on 2 of them. Unfortunately, we don't really capitalize on it as Arya jumps across the way and fails all 3 of her attempts to yeet this guy into the abyss as well. Still, he's got bigger things to worry about, like these 2 intellect devourers, and even then, one survives. Either way, we get him on the next round alongside one of his buddies down on the ground too, and the remaining warrior completes his lifelong dream of killing the intellect devourers before also getting thrown to a torturous eternity of floating forever through the astral plane. Once they're all dealt with, we learn from the Emperor that this imprisoned Gith is Prince Orpheus, the rightful ruler of the Githyanki and the true source of our protection. The Emperor is simply a leech. If there's anything Arya cannot abide, it is a slaver who thinks himself better than other slavers, so as we head back to bed, we vow to try and free him the first chance we get. The next morning, as we're headed into town, we get assailed by this young child.
I can't find my mum.
We're not exactly good with kids, but we see no reason to hide the truth from this poor refugee and go about our business content that we didn't lie. From here, we see a circus of the last days on the side of the road and decide to go check it out. The guard they have up front is a little rude, but our people's skills actually work for once and we talk our way inside. Whereupon we meet Boney of Stony and Boney's Creations, who sells us a magical statue of herself for the low price of 5,000 gold that grants the Sweetstone features permanent buff. Quite literally just the bless spell, granting a d4 boost to both our attack rolls and saving throws. We also notice there's a genie nearby using a ring of mage hand to cheat customers out of what's supposed to be a game of chance. Naturally, we steal it from him. And to rub it in his face, we use the wheel ourselves, landing on the jackpot.
Possible.
He doesn't much like that though, and Arya ends up getting teleported into a jungle full of dinosaurs, if you'd believe it. This Jurassic Park is more than a little scary with all the livid lizards lazing about, and to make it a little bit less scary, we precast haste and square up properly. We're able to take out one very quickly, however, as another spots us, it immediately dashes and pounces, knocking us prone and breaking our concentration, where we learn that they can't really hit us. Especially once we get concentrating on a blur spell, it turns out they're more bark than bite, or whatever sound dinosaurs make. One of them does start getting horny though, which makes the others horny too, which I guess is a buff, but they go down too, all the same, horny or otherwise, in just a few rounds till eventually the place is cleared out. Now that we're able to look around, we find the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel in a nearby backpack, which lets us use illusion and enchantment spells as a bonus action after hitting someone with a weapon. Obviously really great for our action economy, replacing our Ring of Protection. Plus, defeating those horny dinosaurs has inspired our climaxing wizard to greater heights, bumping us up to level 9, increasing our proficiency and blade song bonuses to +4, giving 5th level spell slots and access to those corresponding spells, but most notably increasing our shadow blade damage by another d8 if we cast it with one of these slots. Continuing on, there's a portal out of here leading us back to the city, thankfully, and as we get looking for a way to get past the guard station everywhere, we notice a little cave in the wall, wherein we find the Iron Hand Gnomes being led by none other than Wolverine Bongle, who wants us to break inside the Steelwatch Foundry where Gordy's metal police force is being produced by enslaved Gondians and... boom. Which actually isn't the worst idea, especially if we can get the Gondians to escape while the place is blowing up, though Barkus thinks otherwise. Either way, we take the bomb off his hands since it's probably safer in ours. Using our mad hops, we're able to sneak past the guards up front, and a truly miraculous persuasion roll shows that Arya can actually convince even the most stalwart folks to lower a drawbridge into the city. Unfortunately, along the way, we're forced to attend Gortash's coronation to Archduke, a total sham of a ceremony, but he seems to think it makes us pals, so we play along, before finally arriving in the lower city proper. First thing we do, of course, is go donate a buttload of money to Eilistrai, who, for our devotion, both in action and monetary value, rewards us with Anointed in Splendor for a permanent +2 to saves. Then we head down the street and talk to Fitz the Firecracker in order to buy the Dead Shot, essentially just expanding our crit range by 1 so long as it's equipped. Also down the road, we find Eredin from Act 1, who's looking for the Night Song and wants to sell her to an evil wizard living in this tower. Sadly, he doesn't quite believe us when we tell him we've got no clue where she is.
Hope you hit it well, mate.
Either way, all this shopping and walking and talking has Arya a bit stressed, so we head back to camp only to find Halsin absolutely tweaking over an unconscious Scratch, eventually going as far as stabbing himself in his lunacy only to reveal it was Orin all along. God, she would have loved drama class at the Bladesinger Academy. This whole pantomime is just her fun way of letting us know she's kidnapped Halsin and will only give him back if we kill Gortash and duel her to the death over the Netherstones. Then she's gone in a puff of smoke. Since we once again didn't get any sleep, we decide to head back to bed another time, only to get jumped by Eredin and his goons come looking for Dame Aelin. Now, me personally, I wouldn't want to get on the bad side of a very annoyed and sleep-deprived Arya, but hey, whacking fellas is great stress relief. Plus, after we hit one, we get to test our new ring and heal up. The evening assailants are pretty weak, though still strong enough to defeat the demigod daughter of Selûne, but let's be real here, that's not saying much. Whenever it's Arya's turn, we just slash the heck out of anyone nearby and wander further down the alleys, leaving most of them struggling to keep up as always. After taking out a few more with a couple quick stabs, including Eredin himself, we've built up a bunch of arcane acuity and get a massive upcasted bonus action hold person thanks to our ring, making the rest of this fight more of a bonding experience for Aelin and Arya than anything else, leaving the one unheld cleric for the very last. One thing's for sure though, we both definitely want to trounce Lorroakin in his own citadel. But first, a good night's sleep is in order. The next day, we get exploring the city and do some run-of-the-mill errands for Arya, like solving a bunch of puzzles in a hidden long-lost dead dragon's lair, blowing up the world's greasiest sewer dweller and all of his friends, and successfully read a local ne'er-do-well's mind to gain access to the local thieves guild, all of which gives us enough experience to reach level 10, granting all the usual progression alongside Song of Defense, a rather interesting tool that lets us reduce damage we take from attacks by expending spell slots, though usually we'd rather keep them for stuff like shield anyways. Also, now that we do have access to the prior mentioned guild hall, we can freely buy Terrazul, which is essentially a speed potion that lasts for 2 turns, stacks with haste, and doesn't take an action or bonus action to consume. Very good as a pinch or in one. With our little baggie now in hand, we go pay a visit to Lorroakin and Roland, who's also his apprentice or something, but he doesn't much much like him either.
But never under your tutelage.
And a fight kicks off. Also, despite it being a little while since our last fight, Aelin still has missing HP from her fight with Eredin. Nonetheless, we get showing Lorroakin what a real wizard looks like as we start clobbering his elementals and try to confuse as many baddies as we can, forgetting about the head honcho's deadly reaction, meaning we immediately resort to our brand new drugs to heal up using a potion. Aelin promptly goes down herself, and she is definitely not getting up this time, and sadly neither is Roland, who goes down before he gets a turn as well. His sacrifice will certainly be remembered, while we continue cutting down the first Myrmidon and getting to work on the next. As each one falls, Lorroakin's reaction gets a little bit weaker, making sure of course to end our turn out of the way with HP topped up, made extra easy thanks to a speed pot. Most of the enemies on this round spend their turns healing up or buffing each other with various spells, and the few who do reach us don't do a lot of damage. However, the Terrazul runs out, so we need to survive another round of attacks too, thankfully none of which are deadly. Once we do get another turn, we're able to quickly take out Myrmidon 2 of 4 and continue to heal as always, plus make sure we don't miss another round by refreshing our speed. At this point, there's not too much to be afraid of since Lorroakin is the only one really dishing out regular damage, and even his strongest spells aren't enough. Continuing to wail on the remaining elementals over the next few rounds, we decide to let our speed potion lapse since Lorroakin isn't doing much. Of course, the moment we do, he starts spewing fireball after fireball and almost takes us out. Our hero survives regardless with 6 whole HP, which is 6 times the amount necessary, so it really wasn't even close. And the climax we've been building up to this whole time is enough to fully heal while getting us close enough to finish off the 2 remaining summons. To make things even better, the immature whiny wizard has resorted to using spells like Poison Spray. As such, it's hardly a challenge to finish him with both his offense and defense fully depleted. Our celestial companion, in customary fashion, decides to stop playing dead at this point and do her part in ensuring we'll never have to deal with Lorroakin again. To reward ourselves for ridding the world of one more wayward wizard, and because it's what Roland would have wanted, we go loot the vaults and grab all sorts of cool scrolls that we can learn, including some very special ones like Artistry of War, which is basically a superpowered magic missile that can only be cast once per long rest. After clearing out the vaults and mourning the loss of our frenemy Roland, we decide to hit up the local therapist's office. When the session gets started though, the therapist herself doesn't even want us to look at her, which only makes us suspicious. But we share our woes regardless, answering question after question, pouring our heart out to this mysterious woman who eventually tells Arya that she has a melancholy heart. No doubt because of all the internalized guilt that she feels for the harm caused by the monstrous acts her people have committed in the name of deities like Loth or Shar, such as...
I am Viconia de Veer.
Oh, yeah, such as her. Before we can properly confront Viconia, the would-be drow hero, she dips into the basement where we chase after her with the Eversight ring equipped to prevent any Shar and Darkness shenanigans, and Shovel gets us a surprise round. Starting things off, we drop a cloud kill on as many of the Sharans as we can before passing the round. Viconia, who actually rolled higher than us, castigates her heart form, giving us a whole host of debuffs and even gets guaranteed crits on us now. But so long as we keep her away with spells like Ice Storm and skedaddle backwards at the end of every turn, we should be okay. Yes, our regular strategy of kiting enemies excels in this fight too, this time with funny slipping animations. The enemies are also smart enough to use Darkness Clouds to overwrite Cloud Kill, and some of them can even teleport right over any obstacles we put in their way. Viconia herself does also teleport right over the ice next round and makes us feeble and frightened, which still isn't too big of a deal since we can wall of fire this narrow staircase and continue to misty step backwards. As things continue, our Twisted Kin's followers just kind of throw themselves into the fire, and it becomes apparent if we don't want them to catch us, they simply won't. The only person who's been able to catch up is the leader lady herself. However, we're no longer frightened by her, so we can swing freely, proccing her legendary action, admittedly taking a big chunk of damage. Though not so much that we don't also speed potion and keep swinging away, almost killing her, then continuing our kiting further up the stairs. stairs. Everyone else keeps struggling to make it past the upcasted wall of fire, and our main foe decides she's better off being nowhere near Arya's line of sight. Sadly for this lot, we have a second upcasted wall of fire, and another ice storm to boot, which does trigger the legendary action again, but doesn't get melted by the wall of fire, because that's just how these spells interact, oddly enough. Now, not only do they need to navigate through this wall, but they also need to do it while trying not to slip down the stairs. The vicious vulture Viconia gets vanquished on her turn, and she will no longer prey on the grief of the poor denizens of this city, leaving behind just the very few stragglers who manage to make it past all of our AoE spells, and those do not take a long time to clean up at all, especially with the help of Hold Person. Afterwards, we head to the back of the room where we sacrifice Viconia's shield to this altar in order to open a door to another hidden room wherein lies a Mirror of Loss. Upon passing a check with it, we're able to temporarily sacrifice 2 points of one ability in order to gain a permanent 2 for another. We choose Dexterity, bumping it up to 22, increasing our attacks, initiative, AC, and saving throws. It really is the best stat. Because the whole actual therapy thing didn't end up working out, we do a little retail therapy instead, buying a nice new fit for our spiffy looking Spellblade. Tragically though, as much as the new outfit helps the headaches, they immediately come back when we see our fellow wizard and friend Volothab Gadarm being lynched on our way to the Steelwatch Foundry. Freeing him only takes a single arrow shot at least, and these goons, one of them literally naming themselves that by the way, are as easy as memorizing a first level spell the way they go down one after another to all of our usual tricks. Volo says he needs to talk to us about something later on at camp where he'll eventually give us the Slayer Knowledge permanent buff, making it a little bit easier for us when we have to square up against Orin. Just a moment later, we use invisibility to sneak into the foundry nearby, finding that the Gondians are indeed being enslaved to make the Steel Watch, with the threat of both them and their families getting exploded to Kingdom Come. We at least find the blind leader of the Gondians, Xander Tubin, all by himself in the back and are able to start up a conversation. He says that if we help find and free the hostage families, him and his people would throw off their chains, and if there's anything Arya is happy to help with, it's definitely that. With a goal in mind, we get investigating the city for leads, pretty quickly finding a warehouse full of wargs, a warg house if you will, that are just as hastily cleared out. And with them out of the way, we find a hidden basement with a submarine of all things. Conveniently enough, its pilot is also here. All it takes is a bit of intimidating for him to agree to take us to the underwater prison known as the Iron Throne. Luckily, it doesn't matter how many times you fail, you can just keep pestering the complicit slaver. Soon enough, we arrive in the depths right as Gortash catches wind of our perfect plot and starts to blow the place to smithereens. Since we're on a timer, we get prepping with all the tools we've got. Vigilance elixirs, blur, a flying potion, blade song, a speed potion, you name it. And once we enter the place and see just how little time we've got, we also down some Terrazul, giving a whole lot of move speed. Enough move speed, in fact, to free literally everyone imprisoned here in a single turn, including Omeluum, who is somehow here, and the righteous Duke Ravengard, who has been mind controlled, so I don't really know why he is here either. Plus, we still have enough leftover actions to take one of the fishy prison guards out for good. Unfortunately, we can only do so much as some of the prisoners get shot down themselves, but with all of them on a mad dash towards the submarine, the vast majority make it out alive. And so does Arya, as we climb up just in time to avoid the ocean-shaking explosion and get out of dodge. Now that all the hostages are freed, we use invisibility to once again sneak into the foundry, this time heading straight for the basement, where I guess the Gondians already heard the good news because they're tussling it out big time. However, our big-brained wizard is smart enough to know they'll only die before she can save them if she joins in the fight, so we go for the core, using knock to open the door in our way, invisibility again to sneak past the Hellfire Watchers that guard everything, and the bomb that Wulbren gave us to show Gortash we can blow up things too. I'd show you guys the fireworks, but this Steel Watcher decided to censor any violence for us. How kind. Now, you may be worried about all the Gondians that were inside, but they actually are completely fine, all in a day's work. No good deed goes unpunished, however, as Wulbren himself shows up at this point, wanting to commit some genocide.
Let's end this!
We, of course, aren't gonna let that happen, and if it means we get to absolutely obliterate Wulbren, Well, that's just icing on the cake. And hey, we don't even lose our friendship with Barkus because he's just such a little sweetie pie. In fact, we only gain things as we reach level 11, our penultimate level, which grants 6 level spells, the very pinnacle of our magical might. Before we go track down Gortash, we do take a quick detour to the local Tsar Palace, where we hear a local vampire lord has been up to no good. Once inside, we put old Liz's little vampire spawn out of their misery, solve a little word puzzle to open the big ominous red glowing door, eradicate the mangy menagerie just sort of hanging out in his ballroom, and later than sooner, track him down in his basement where he's performing some sort of profane ritual. He really isn't a tough fight for Arya, since we can just counterspell everything he does over and over and whack him a few times in the face to get him running back to his coffin, at which point he really doesn't last. For our efforts, we get Rhapsody, a +1 dagger that serves as our new offhand and gives up to a +3 bonus to attacks, damage, and spell save DC for each enemy killed that long rest. Basically just meaning we have to go into this basement and kill 3 rats every day. Being that we're properly equipped, we get raiding Worm's Rock Fortress, and by that I mean using our tried and true invisibility to just walk past all the guards stationed here straight to the rooftop where Gortash awaits. Shovel gets all of the Gortmeister's goons surprised, heroically sacrificing our life in the process, and we start going after said goons on our turn, ticking down their HP. As he is now, the Bay Knight Tyrant is essentially a non-factor, so we largely ignore him, simply continuing to run outside in the hopes that he follows. He does indeed keep following over the course of the next few rounds as we get closer and closer to the ledge, but he's a little slower than we'd hoped for, and as such, we dip back and occasionally whack him for a little bit more arcane acuity, causing him to transform into a much scarier version of himself, capable of placing curses on us that deal 20 d10 damage if we let them go off. Tragically enough, our plan to telekinesis him off the cliff doesn't work because we just can't get proper line of sight, leading to a bit of a change in strategies. We continue to pester his lackeys, who are way too slow to be concerned for Arya, and waltz over to a different part of the roof while using remove curse scrolls to get rid of this giant hand whenever he places it on us. While we wait for everyone to follow us over here, we keep taking out the little guys where we can, and eventually we're able to use one telekinesis to slam Gortash over here, and a second one to slam him down 5 stories to his pitiful demise. The only surviving soldier at this point also does not take a long time to kill, and the second of 3 Netherstones is ours just like that. True to her word, Orin leaves behind a note at our camp telling us to seek out the Murder Tribunal. If we succeed there, we'll gain access to her true temple. When we actually arrive here, however, we find Saravok Onchev, another figure straight out of the history books and a ballspawn who threatened Baldur's Gate in decades past. He seeks to turn us into an unholy assassin to serve the Lord of Murder, and while it's easy for Arya to understand why a god would want such a perfect spell sword, we'd really rather not. Still, we play along since we're smart enough to wait for the right moment to strike, telling them all about how we murked Gortash, and they're really into it.
Your words delight him.
So into it that they want to meet us in the next room to make it official. The ghosts teleport on ahead, but poor Saravok has to walk, which means we get a beautiful booming blade while he's isolated.
Sort of fight. And now you have one.
Now that we have the fight that we sought, our extra attack isn't working properly, so we just pass things to Saravok and let him whiff a few times thanks to our precasted blur. Meanwhile, his buddies are slowly walking back over here. It is quickly back to Arya's turn, where we keep building up arcane acuity and bonus action hold person him to make all future attacks even more deadly. As such, only 1 round afterwards, the far too old man is taken out for good and will hopefully stay in the history books. His ethereal lackeys are somewhat spooky, however most of that comes from the fact that they have strong spells. Since we have counterspell, though, we don't have to worry. Once that issue is solved, so too are they. From Saravok's corpse, we grab the means we need to enter Orin's temple, as well as a convenient map to the place. Before we head there though, during our prep we walk past a local bed and board wherein we hear a couple ladies getting freaky with tentacles, and not in a fun way. It's not tough for us to kill a lone newborn mind flayer at this point, and as a reward from the surviving lady, we get Rapture, a buff that lasts till our next long rest, increasing all of our rolls by a d6. After that's dealt with, we're off to the temple, walking past the suspiciously ambushable site, completely invisible just in case, and using the amulet afterwards to enter the temple proper. Inside, we find Orin looming over Halson, not too happy that we murdered Saravok, but luckily Arya's way with words has never let us... Well, we tried our darndest. Halsin may have bit the dust like so many of our friends along the way, but just like them, he will not be forgotten. Starting things off, we promptly and instantly get stunned. Thankfully, stunned or not, Orin misses the vast majority of her attacks. However, because we can't do anything, we get afflicted by Baal's edict, meaning we must kill someone else this turn or die. Plus, we get whacked a bit more, which would have killed if it wasn't for the universal resistance elixir that we drank before the fight. When we do get a turn, we Bladesong as always, whack this guy to build up arcane acuity, heal up all of our missing HP, and use a thunder wave to kill not just the spellcaster here, but one of the ritual casters buffing up Orin every round. We get hit with another Baal's edict and laid into a little bit more, but our AC and saving throws are so high that it's not too big of a deal. Next round, we take out the fellow who stunned us earlier by removing his unstoppable stacks and thunder waving him too, as well as cast Blur to avoid Orin even further. Something that works out wonderfully as she's pretty much a non-factor for the next few rounds at least. From here, we bonk her with our booming blade, activating the crawler mucus that we coated our weapon in beforehand, paralyzing her completely, giving us the next couple rounds to run all around the arena, demonstrating why railings should be included in the construction of any good underground cult's battle arena. She does manage to break free of the poison right after and land a couple of pretty dang good hits, but it is too little too late, since now we're able to permanently remove her unstoppable stacks with a few magic missile upcasts. And her attacks continue to miss like no tomorrow, so the only real damage we end up taking is from her legendary action as we lay into her turn after turn. Right when she's about to die, just to add insult to injury, we give her the same treatment as her lackeys. Like that, the third and final Netherstone is ours for the taking. Plus, when we pick it up, we also learn the location of where the Netherbrain is hiding. A good thing that in the middle of that fight, we worked our way up to the very peak of our power, level 12. We get a couple new spells as well, but more importantly, our final feat in the form of Savage Attacker, letting us reroll our damage dice and take the higher result whenever we attack in melee. Because this rerolls each die individually and we roll a ton of dice, this is a massive increase to our damage. Of course, we do want to take out the brain, but there's one more infernal fellow we gotta check in on first, and that means breaking into the local Diabolist shop. Handily enough, we find a ritual circle already set up for us. All we need to do is grab the various materials we need to open up a portal, then recall our school lessons on how to open portals as we plop them into position to get a doorway right into Raphael's House of Hope. Rather aptly named as far as houses go, since the moment we're in, we immediately meet Hope, who seems to recognize us as a Bladesinger.
You came.
Seeing her chance to get out of her imprisonment here, she begs for our aid, and in return grants an honestly rather flattering disguise to Arya. We of course promise to free her in any way we can, finding ourselves sneaking into Raphael's boudoir through the balcony. In here, we find a fiend who looks shockingly like Raphael himself, whose bed is so tall that we can't even reach him while he's asleep in it, so we gotta talk to him.
A lost little mouse.
And then get obliterating him with the most powerful booming blades we've dished out yet. Much to our dismay, he does summon a whole bunch of imps too, but we've got a decent chunk of AoE damage to help with that, and a protection from evil and good that we had the foresight to cast that keeps him at bay. Raphael's lookalike Harlep gets taken down real fast, and in case you're curious what our damage is looking like, it's pretty dang good. Soon after, all of the ill-fated impotent imps go down too, with only a small scratch or two landing our way. On Harlep's corpse, we grab a key to Raphael's hidden safe, also in the boudoir, revealing a note with the password needed to grab the Orphic Hammer, capable of removing any and all chains, including, as the name suggests, Orpheus's as well. Also, there's a bath in here that fully restores us as if we took a long rest that we can use as much as we'd like, which means after we head into the archives and steal everything in it, including the Amulet of Greater Health to increase our HP to 122, and the prior mentioned Orphic Hammer, we don't have to worry about holding back as all the denizens of the house square up, such as this Hell Sphere, a literal ball of hellfire that can still be mind controlled with planar binding. Sadly, this thing kinda blows. Luckily, it's not our main source of damage, and we can feel free to blitz our way through all these little guys till eventually our balls start slamming into another ball while we just sit in the bath. In a real enemies to lovers twist, right when they're both brought down to next to 0 HP, they just can't bring themselves to deliver the finishing blow. Since Arya is a real bleeding heart, she takes it upon herself to finish them off with a single cast of a spell so they don't spend a moment apart. Once the main floor of the house is cleared out, we head into the basement where Hope is imprisoned and try to catch her jailer's attention with a chain lightning. To no avail. They do eventually notice the deadly spellcaster that just obliterated half of them, but for the most part they miss when they do attack, although they do have the odd scary ray from the spectators that puts some ill effect on us, getting Arya actually quite low at one point. After the crowd control wears off and we can heal up though, we can just walk into melee and take pretty much everyone out in just a couple swings, since our crit hits deal almost 100 damage each. Now that the jailers are all gone and the house is cleared, we get to free Hope and do our prep before we confront Raphael himself, who is no doubt on his way to stop our escape. That means summoning an Earth Myrmidon, a couple Mud Methods as well, and a Celestial Deva scroll that we got from Leroican. Plus, once we're actually at the exit, we down a flying and speed potion before Raphael himself shows up. Alongside this lady, who Arya absolutely hates from the look of it, and Yrgir from the Mausoleum, who decides to join our side since he doesn't much like Raphael. Just like that, down comes the claw and a fight kicks off. Thanks to a Vigilance Elixir, we go first, using an Artistry of War and an upcasted magic missile to obliterate one of the soul pillars buffing the big man, then skedaddling out the door, leaving everyone else to sort things out. Yrgir just gets disintegrating that random lady, the Deva we summoned wallops a nearby pillar, and our Mud Methods get disintegrated before they get a turn. Alongside Hope, sadly, who gets hit by a massive Hellfire Blast, instantly triggering her Death Ward and causing her to burn to death at the start of her turn. For the record, we did give her a Vigilance Elixir in an attempt to prevent that. Our Myrmidon does eventually get their turn, where they work on their assigned pillar, and before you know it, it's back to Arya, who spends another round doing the same thing as last, taking out one more pillar. This round in general is much more tame, with our summons hitting the pillars as before, and the enemies just kind of milling about, not doing a whole lot. Either way, pillar 3 gets got by our Myrmidon. A few baddies have started to filter their way out of the room towards Arya, who immediately disintegrates them first chance we get, and right afterwards the final pillar drops. Something Raphael makes clear he isn't too happy about, as now he actually focuses our Myrmidon. With all of the pillars gone, we're not too upset as the rounds go by, with Arya taking out Raphael's goons, and Raphael takes out ours in return. Once most of the little guys are cleared out of the way, we start focusing on the big man properly, making sure to end our turns as far away as possible to avoid his massive damage. Yrgir sadly bites the dust, since all the little hits he's been taking eventually add up, leaving Arya truly by her lonesome. Right when Raphael stops next to a rather dangerous looking death pit. Well, I mean, he's just kinda asking for a thunderwave at this point, right? And yes, in typical Raphael fashion, those wings really were just for show. Wouldn't you know it, as the last two champions go down, we barely managed to avoid winning this entire fight without taking a single point of damage, just as our flawless perfectionist is always aiming for. Afterwards, we take a mostly pleasant boat trip over to where the brain awaits us, if you ignore the part where it tries to impale us with a stalactite and blows up our boat. Upon actually getting there though, the brain is far more massive than ever before, and no doubt more powerful too, powerful enough to bring us into its psyche. Before we can use the Netherstones to properly bring the beast down, we find out this whole thing was a part of its plan, all to get a hold of the Netherstones to power itself up. Wait, what was that whole blowing up our boat thing about then? Was that just for fun? Yeah, anyways, finally, after God knows how many countless attempts I've given this, we're presented with the hardest check in the game, and for the very first time ever, in one grand climactic moment, we pass it. Arya unleashes the full might of the Netherstones within the brain's psyche, only to mildly inconvenience it and have to be saved by the Emperor anyways. But hey, at least we get to save Orpheus now, not that the Emperor much cares for that.
Do not seek me again.
Apparently, Orpheus doesn't much care for it either actually, since he blames us for his imprisonment. Once everything is properly explained to him though, he realizes we've gotta work together and that one of us needs to become a full illithid to properly use the Netherstones. Something that he tragically takes on himself, sacrificing himself to save all others. Just in time too, because as we head outside we find the city almost in ruins and things getting more dire by the moment. Thankfully, we're not the only heroes who have risen to the occasion. As much as Arya has tried to rise to the occasion to not endanger any others, all those we've helped along the way are here to return the favor, and it's a surprisingly full room. With their help, we head into the sewers to avoid the large army up above, decimating them with Orpheus's brutal black holes and slaughtering them with Zevlor's Hellrider's shattering smites. After that, we're able to sneak all the way up to the base of the brain stem, where we've got no choice but to make the brutal climb. Don't ask me why a flight spell wouldn't work. At the top, our final confrontation begins, and the Emperor, now a thrall under the Netherbrain, shows up to stop us. Sadly for him, we've taken Vigilance Elixirs, Speed Potions, and Flying Potions, so we immediately Dimension Door to the Brain's Crown, use a Featherfall Scroll to bait out counter spells, a Globe of Invulnerability to protect us, and Orpheus gets channeling the Netherstones, finishing up with a Darkness Arrow to make us extra safe. As a result, all of the bad guys just kind of walk around the place, not really sure what to do, and when it's back to Orpheus, the portal into the brain finally opens up, where we can see that successful check earlier did actually reduce his HP by a fifth. Either way, once Arya is inside, we use another Globe of Invulnerability to keep us nice and safe, while Orpheus spends a few rounds buffing us up with Fierce Perilous Stakes, each stack of which increases our damage by 15, meaning when we cast Magic Missile, we get the brain nice and low enough to finally unleash the greatest climax that the world has ever seen. At long last, Arya's first quest is over. The brain is defeated and the grand design is put to rest. Everything we built up all this time has come to fruition. But don't worry, stories like this don't end so easily. Arya still has many more quests to go on, people to save, and challenges to face, and you know what? So do we.
To you.
Thank you very much for watching, folks. This is the end of the Monoclass Challenge series that I've been doing for 2.5 years. It has been quite a journey, and I've learned a lot along the way, and I'm truly grateful for those of you who have shown support in any capacity, even if it's just watching the first 5 minutes of one video. As mentioned though, we've got more challenges to face. This is not the end of the channel, nor is it the end of the Baldur's Gate 3 content that I'll be making. I've got a lot more in the works that might be a little bit different in style, but I hope you'll still end up liking it. So don't go anywhere, and thank you once more for being here in the first place. And as always, a special thank you to our Storyteller tier members, OCanCan, Mark Rainbow, That Be Renee, Vivian, El Guardia, Ramon Standalone, Witch Amy, Shmentai Neko, Miku, Achilles the Spartan, and Hey, What Does This Do?